I want to share some information about gender differences in anxiety disorders and depression. It's probably not surprising for you to hear that in general, over the lifetime, females have higher rates of anxiety and depression relative to males. But what I really want to talk about today is that there are 3 stages in particular where there is an increased vulnerability to developing anxiety and depression among women. So that first stage is adolescence. There's actually really interesting research showing that during childhood, the rates of anxiety and depression are about equal for boys and girls. And then as soon as they hit adolescence, so right around the ages 12 and 13, the rates for girls goes way up, whereas the rates for boys remains relatively stable. So clearly adolescence is one time of increased vulnerability to these disorders for girls specifically. The second stage that I want to talk about is the postpartum period. So right after having a baby, you see that there is an increased risk, quite a bit, for developing anxiety and depression in new mothers. So this is called either postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. And then the third stage is during the menopause transition. So the average age of menopause in the United States is 53. And right around that time, we see an increased risk of developing depression and also anxiety, although the research on that is a little bit skimpier. Now, there are lots of possible reasons for why these 3 stages show such increased vulnerability to developing these disorders, but I want to focus on 2 of these reasons in particular. The first one is biological. So during puberty, the postpartum period, and menopause, you see a lot of fluctuations in hormonal levels in women. One of those hormones is estrogen, but there are lots of other hormones that are implicated in mood. And anytime you have unstable or really fluctuating levels of hormones, you are at higher risk for also developing fluctuating or unstable levels of negative emotion, which can then branch out to look like anxiety or depression. The second reason is more of an environmental reason. If you think about it, these 3 stages are associated with lots and lots of changes in terms of the girl's or the woman's role. During adolescence, the girl's role is changing in terms of her peer relationships, her family relationships, her role as a student. She's got much more responsibility at school. Things start to get serious. And she has developing independence that will bring with it some stress. And even if the independence is really good, it does bring some stress with it. During the postpartum period, this is the very definition of a changing role. The woman is becoming a mother for the first time, taking on new worries, new responsibilities, a completely new outlook on life, and really a completely new self-definition, going from being responsible only to herself and maybe to a partner, to really being responsible for the life and the upbringing and well-being of a small person. And then during menopause, of course, there are lots of changing roles. This is when a lot of women are facing an empty nest for the first time. Maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they're in a caregiving role for aging parents, or maybe they are facing the reality of losing their parents. Lots and lots is changing during that menopausal stage. So of course, anytime we have drastically changing roles, we're going to have changes in emotion, lots of positive emotion potentially, but also probably lots of negative emotion that then ends up translating into things like anxiety and depression. So to wrap it up, in general, women have higher rates of anxiety and depression compared to men, but there are 3 stages of vulnerability over the course of the life of the woman, and those are during puberty or adolescence, during the postpartum period, and during the menopause transition.